A young progressive challenger is running a grassroots campaign to defeat a 20-year incumbent. Does that sound familiar? No, this video isn't relitigating the 2018 New York 14 primary. Instead, we're talking about Minnesota Congressional District 4, where Amane Badhasso is looking to unseat incumbent Betty McCollum. Let's start with the latest news, and that's that the DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor Party, has endorsed Betty McCollum. The way this works is the DFL holds precinct caucuses. Winners of those get the support of the DFL, and Betty McCollum won, and it wasn't particularly close. Of the 326 ballots cast, McCollum won 211, Badhasso won 111. And this endorsement is pretty important. I'm going to quote a Minnesota Public Radio piece here. An endorsement unlocks campaign resources from the party, and endorsed candidates typically win their primary elections, which will be held on August 9th. Although McCollum won by a fairly large margin, it does provide some context that this may be a bit of a closer race than in years past. In 2016, 2018, and 2020, not a single primary challenger was able to crack 10% in a primary against Betty McCollum. So precinct caucus versus primary, not a perfect one-to-one, but this race is shaping up to be a lot closer than some of Betty McCollum's primaries in the past. Next, let's talk about endorsements. In addition to the DFL, McCollum also has the endorsements of Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, Governor Tim Walz, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter, and many, 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 many more. Meanwhile, Badhasso has the support of Nelsie Yang, a St. Paul City Council member from Ward 6, who also happens to be her campaign chair, and she has no endorsements listed on her website. So, I'm not sure who's actually endorsed Badhasso other than Nelsie Yang, but if she has endorsements, they are not from major political players in Minnesota. However, there is one big holdout. That's Ilhan Omar, the congressional representative from CD5, member of the squad. And while she hasn't endorsed either candidate, she did have this to say about Badhasso. She is truly one of the most impressive people I have ever met. She is incredible, and I have never met anyone who disagrees in the decade that I have known her. So we'll see if Omar decides to endorse a candidate in this race. I'd be a little bit surprised if she didn't. And getting Ilhan Omar's support will, at the very least, help that candidate raise a lot of money in a short amount of time. Speaking of fundraising, let's talk about, fundraising. And Betty McCollum has outraised Amane Badhasso by about 2-1. She's outspent her about 3-1, more than 3-1 in fact, and she has more than twice as much cash on hand. However, the $600,000 raised by Badhasso is nothing to scoff at. To give you some perspective, McCollum's Republican opponents in 2018 and 2020, those general elections, didn't even crack $25,000 raised, so I think this is going to be McCollum's toughest opponent in a very long time. One narrative, one storyline in this race that was sort of explored by The Intercept is that this is a primary from the left. And I suppose that's true to a certain extent. McCollum has declined to become a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and according to progressivepunch.org, her lifetime voting record ranks her as the 107th most progressive member of 212 Democrats. However, Betty McCollum is a co-sponsor of Medicare for All, sort of become a litmus test for what it means to be progressive in Congress. McCollum also has a very strong voting record on Palestinian rights, so she does have some progressive credentials. Ultimately, I think McCollum pulls this out by a pretty decent margin. I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar to those precinct caucus results, somewhere in the ballpark of 66-34. McCollum has the advantage in endorsements, fundraising, institutional support, and that very important incumbency advantage. In fact, incumbent re-election rates haven't dipped below 85% once in the last 58 years, which is pretty hard to believe. In 2020, for example, 94.7%. So to answer the title question, is Amane Badhasso the next AOC? Probably not. I expect McCollum to win by 15 to 30 percentage points. And if you enjoyed this video, if you could subscribe, that would mean so much, help out this channel a lot.